right. Was that intro over the top or what?
That was great.
It was awesome.
Hey, everyone, welcome to this is a historic night. It's a history here is made at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today at 7:30, this is the first Halloween broadcast that's focused on workplace horror stories. Joining me tonight, Hiedi Brooks, Mike LaMont, Sam Navarro, and Eleni Anastos. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hey,
Thanks
how
for
are you?
having us.
No problem, no problem. I built the padded room behind me here to contain all the madness that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we appreciate everybody who's watching the live stream right now. Make sure that you do post comments and share some of your workplace horror stories. So and really looking at tonight, I know Hiedi and Mike and Eleni, I know you know this as well. I've been so looking forward to doing this special. I think it's been something I've been really looking forward to do. So I'm real excited to have this opportunity. And, the other thing, too, is, there's so many things going on right now in the news and all that. Wait, hold on one second, guys. Hold on. And now for some breaking news, I turn it over to Hiedi Brooks and Mike LaMont. Take it away, Hiedi and Mike.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for that. I guess now is the time to announce that Mike and I will be doing a live stream broadcast on a consistent basis, right, Mike?
That's right. And what are we going to talk about, Hiedi?
Well, it's called Energize. So all of our topics will be surrounded by things that make you feel energized. Hey, Gabe. How do you pronounce his name, Jim?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Nice. Yeah. So all of these topics will be surrounded by things that make you feel energized, energy topics. Some of the upcoming topics are ones such as one focusing on underdogs, pressures, weight of gold, some books that we'll read and share with each other. What are some of the other topics, Mike?
So we were talking, Hiedi and I were talking, and we both agreed that it would be wonderful if we could help folks develop their careers and come along in their careers, especially the younger folks that are coming right out of college that don't have any professional experience. And this stream is for everyone, certainly, because anyone can learn from it. But we really wanted to make it about building up young folks as they are stepping into these professional careers. And I remember when I went, I started working, I had, no idea of what to expect. And if you didn't know something, should you pretend you know the answer, or should you just kind of, or should you ask? And so those are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, for sure. It always is, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So super excited. I think it'll be high energy, be a lot of positivity. And again, everyone should be able to take something from these. So, yeah, exciting news.
I didn't realize that was coming right away.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Hey, why hold back? Why hold back? And Eleni, you have a new broadcast that is on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You want to talk about your broadcast as well?
Yes, mine is called Finding Purpose, and my real mission is to help people get more connected to what they do. And to also find purpose, it really could be any aspect of your life, because the more emotionally connected you are to, for example, why you want to make more money. You can't just say, oh, I want to make 7 figures. Why do you want to make 7 figures? You have to get connected to your purpose. And to me, it's also about finding purpose in things that happen to you, outside circumstances that you had no control over. And obviously the last 19 months have exemplified that. But I don't believe anything is ever 100% bad. There's always a lesson or something in it we can learn to move forward. So it's about finding purpose, to learn the lessons, to move forward professionally and personally.
That's terrific.
Yeah, excellent. Sam, you got anything to announce?
Yeah, so I'm going to be joining this great group of folks, and I'm doing a live stream by the name of Be Local. And for those that know me, they know that I love supporting local businesses. I shop at the local butcher and the local farmers market, and I buy everything I can from a local supplier. And this isn't just for the industrial contracting space. This is for anyone and everyone. And so I'm hoping that we drum up a lot of interest for folks in Houston. And if it expands into other markets and other businesses, then I welcome all the folks coming back, and saying, hey, we have this cool business in Phoenix. I know that I'll be there next month and hope to find a couple of cool restaurants or bars that we can go and try to highlight a cool story behind it.
I'm so excited to, be part of a group of broadcasters like all of you. The 3 series that you have, including my series with Build Out and Build Out Brief. It's so wonderful to be part of a community, and the platforms that we're going to be broadcasting. Right now this is streaming across LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, and also on Twitter. There's so much opportunity and so much information that we can share. And knowledge. And Sam, yours, I love the concept with Be Local, because it gives a voice to those local, Houston Metro. Houston's such a big metropolitan area and such a diversity of businesses, big, small, and medium size. And now through you, they're going to have a voice and be able to, explain exactly, what they offer and why, people in Houston would want to come do business with them. So thank you all for this opportunity to work with you. It's wonderful.
Well, Sam, you know what, that there's so many of us that travel on a continual basis. And for me, it's easy to find the chains because they're consistent, not necessarily good. They're just consistent. So when
Absolutely.
You're busy on the road, this is a really good idea to say, hey, let us know, about your place, or just let us know that you're there before you travel, because all we have are like Google or Maps right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I came from the restaurant, bar, hospitality industry before I found the beautiful industrial contracting world, and so I've been lucky enough to travel around the country and a little bit of global travel through my times, and I've always sought out the cool restaurants and the cool bars that have a story behind them. And unfortunately, especially now with the way that COVID protocols and supply chain management is such an issue, this is really a personal thing for me, because it takes a lot of guts to open a small business and to leave a corporate career and maybe try to do something. So if I can give back to them and just highlight their business and their risk that they took, I'm really excited about it. And I think it's going to be neat.
That's
Excellent.
a good way to give back. For sure.
Yeah, excellent.
And Lenny, I've watched yours on Saturday morning, your episodes. The 2, you've done 2 so far, right?
Yes.
Yeah, those are really good.
Thank you.
So let's get this broadcast really going for
scary stories,
workplace horror stories. So we have a survey, a poll, and in comments, what you would want to do is put a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you might actually want to put more than one number. So keep that in mind, because some of these might be really relevant for you. But here it is. What is your most feared work nightmare? Number 1, accidentally replying all. Forgetting to mute your video, getting fired, or number 4, getting called on in a meeting ill-prepared. Just put a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or a combination thereof. They're all scary.
They're all scary.
In the comments. For me, it's the replying all. And I think, pre-stream, Heidi, you and I and Mike had that conversation. I think we were all on the same page. I actually have almost done that. And actually, I've been a recipient of somebody that has done that.
Done it, and I am
super embarrassing.
Office makes it hard to from your phone to see sometimes, and some of my coworkers will talk about or after a forward, and I'm always like, oh, that I haven't done that in a while, but I work a lot alone and so I'm not forwarding, but in the past we've talked about emails, and then you always think, did I hit reply all?
And that's why the general rule of thumb is don't say anything in an email that you wouldn't want broadcast, right?
I
But
love
I've seen that happen a number of times, and one of the times there was a client on the thread, and it was just not flattering, and you can't recover from that. You can't say, oh, we didn't mean that, right? So you gotta be careful.
We've never talked about people, but if we talked about, just random intermingles of the work, that's still a tad scary, just is this or this available or this, it's still, you talk a little different.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
We say you can't unsend it, because I've been on the other end where an email came to me. I was the subject of the email, but they thought they were just talking to each other.
Oh.
So yeah, you can't unsend that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
We actually had a vendor that we had decided to cut ties with. And when we sent the email to them, letting them know that we were no longer going to do business, the gentleman accidentally replied all and said, and a bunch of expletives, go ahead and do it, and quickly replied back and said, I'm so sorry, that wasn't intended to go, to you guys, and this and that. And I felt terrible for him.
Yeah.
Because we're all human, right? We're all moving 100 miles an hour at all times. And it does happen. The one thing that I will say to his credit is he owned it and said, I was upset when I hit reply all, and it wasn't a good excuse. It is what it is. And same thing with me. I've accidentally replied all, and I owned it and just apologized, because there's no coming back from it. Like you said, once it's sent, it's sent. And so you just have to own what you did and just try to make up for it in the next run.
There you go. So let's go ahead and let's get into some workplace horror stories. So the first one is called "If the CEO is Always Watching Us, Who's Running the Company?" And I'm going to read this to you guys. I do have a lot here to read, but years ago, I worked for a high-tech company that bragged about being fun like Google, offering employees perks and fun times. Our company provided snacks and drinks, pool tables, hockey, and foosball tables, plus legacy arcade games on consoles on projection screens. A new CEO came aboard and installed hidden cameras in the employee recreation room. Eventually, he began to send out emails calling out employees that he felt were consuming snacks and drinks more than their fair share, and he would always call out employees that he felt were spending more recreational time than work. We found our positive and productive workplace created by the previous CEO now becoming a surveillance state, and employee collaboration was evaporating. The work environment got so toxic that I had to leave, and eventually the investment company fired the new CEO, only after he severely damaged the standing of the company in the IT sector. All these stories are submitted by viewers, and they're true stories. Now, the person that submitted this to me said that this IT company is still around, but they did suffer their image and their branding because of what the investment company CEO did. When you hear a story like this, how's a way to exercise the bad things that happen here? What are some of the things that can be done?
Wow. Well, there's a lot to unpackage with that one, Jim. Certainly the snacks and all those things, I think, were well intended, and we're seeing more and more employers go, hey, we want our employees to feel comfortable. We want them to stay in the building, stay at work, and this is mostly obviously pre-COVID. But when you start to kind of spy on your employees and kind of keep score, so to speak, on who's doing what when, makes me wonder if you have to do that, maybe you got the wrong employees, right? So that really isn't the best way to handle that.
Well, and I appreciate you said well intended, because it's your intentions behind it. So was his intentions to build a bridge and get connected to his employees, or obviously it was to build a divide? That's not a real leader.
Yeah.
So the intentions behind the actions, not so much the action as much to me as the intentions behind it. What were you trying to do? What were you trying to prove?
Yeah.
So I'll play devil's advocate for just a minute, right? I'm kind of good at doing that every once in a while. If a CEO leaves, the first job of the next CEO is to really stop bleeding most of the times, right? Like they don't get rid of really great CEOs and just throw in somebody that's going to run the business exactly like him, right? And so I don't agree with the tactic by any means. I think that if you go in there and that's your only option is to spy on your employees, maybe it's a bad deal. But sometimes, especially these days, you find folks are starting to take advantage of hospitality. And folks, an extra 5 or 10 minutes at lunch doesn't seem like a big deal to us. But to a business that's been choked and overrun and maybe beat up for years, it might be one of those last resorts. And he was trying to figure out who was, playing by the rules and who wasn't. I don't agree with it. I don't believe in micromanaging. I certainly don't agree in spying on anyone. But I think it's always important to see both sides of it and try to find a common ground right down the middle.
Yeah, that's great perspective, Sam, because as you point out that there were many problems going on with that business, and there was a reason why there had to be a change. So, and we don't know the full story, but based on what we do know, it sounds a little spooky that they'd be spying on the employees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what CEOs has that much time on their hands? CEOs are not.
Didn't you watch The Simpsons?
Mr. Burns.
Who is that employee?
Smithers, yeah.
Yeah.
You love the Simpsons. Your Simpsons references.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's not, if you have to spy, then, you should be one-on-one with your employees. You should be able to go into them right away when you see an issue, go to them right away when you see an issue, hold a meeting,
Right.
Call on them one-on-one. But what this scenario has done is, if I was the employee, I would not hang out in their rec room anymore, which makes for a very toxic work environment, so definitely the CEO's fault here.
I see, the only other thing to add is if you're in an office building, there's a 99% chance you're being videotaped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so if you're in the employee kitchen or in the reception area, you're being watched, at least in all the major companies. Now, you're right on 100% that the CEO doesn't need to just be watching it 24/7 to see who's eating extra Snickers bars. But, by all means, it's employees have to keep that in mind. And there's a lot of times that I've seen, especially in my time, that, the receptionist is sitting here on this thing on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on Twitter or doing something. Meanwhile, the phone's ringing, or meanwhile, something else is going on.
Well, that's the key here. For a CEO to install cameras without a symptom that caused him to install cameras is very toxic to begin with. No matter the story behind it, I think, you're a gracious person, it seems. So you're giving the CEO a little bit of credit, saying that something must have been happening for the CEO to react this way, or to spend the time to do it. Whereas I see it as a symptom that the CEO has too much time on his hands. And if I was a board member or the owner, I would be questioning him, because if that's the employee's free time and fun time or let loose time, there shouldn't be alcohol at work. I don't know if that was in there, or I'm looking at the story on the paper, but other than that, they can pretty much, if they're on lunch, say or do whatever they want.
Almost.
Yes.
Almost.
They shouldn't. But, it's a gray area there. But I think that unless there are symptoms, I think this is very toxic on the CEO's part, I would say.
Definitely.
But I love Sam's point that, hey, you're probably in any of the major company large facility, you're probably being recorded anyway. And I think employees need to remember that we do give up some rights to privacy in the workplace. And so there is that as well. So it's good balanced discussion.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I agree with Sam. Definitely recorded, and you should be on your best behavior. I shouldn't play devil's advocate so much because then it seems like I would be goofing off in there, but I wouldn't.
Well,
No, I mean, if you're getting your work done, then that's at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Whether
That's
it takes
exactly
you 1
what
hour,
matters.
4 hours, 8 hours,
Yeah,
12
that's
hours, whatever
what
it is.
matters.
If you're getting your work done, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that I have worked at several places that the coffee pot and water jug banter
Yeah,
was the most toxic place ever.
absolutely.
And that's where everyone came together and conspired against certain people, and that's where all of the malicious gossip happened. And so when you start hearing that maybe it's this person that's starting all of it, and then you notice this person's in the kitchen every day for 2 hours, and it's just a lot of
Now
chatter.
you bring up a very good point there.
Yeah.
That's there's so much strategy behind running a business and having to be responsible for the entire P&L statement that I agree 100%. You shouldn't spy on your employees. Let them be professionals. Let them be whatever. But on the other end of it, if you start hearing when that X person is the one that's starting all this stuff, well, then you start keeping an eye on them a little bit more.
Absolutely. But I've always been a very transparent manager where I will call that person out
Sure.
amongst the group. And that's kind of why I went to the CEO, because I'm more focused on management. So management over management, because I would think you shouldn't have to hide a camera. Now I get the benefits in that for sure, because there is always a bad egg. And sometimes it's hard to find that bad egg or believe or whatnot, but you just got to go off facts. Symptoms will always lead you to them.
Yep.
So our next story is actually an employee watching an executive director. It's actually an international story coming from I believe the United Arab Emirates. So this is a really interesting story. So this one's called "What's Going On Behind the Glass Window." As it goes, I was working as an intern at a nonprofit organization where the operations and purpose were a bit unclear to me. So I really didn't do research on the nonprofit, as I was only an intern there for a university semester. The executive director, a former politician, usually sat in his office, which had a small glass window looking into the area where staff are working. At some point, the executive director asked me to create a list of investor companies in the United Arab Emirates and a few economic problems that Serbia was facing, and then called the Serbian embassy to arrange a meeting with their financial director. I did everything he asked, wondering what this was all about. When the investor company's financial directors agreed to come and meet him, so they're individually coming and meeting with him, he told me his plan. I was supposed to listen in on his meeting, and each time he mentioned Serbia, I would hold cards with the economic issues that I had found in front and hold them in front of his office window so he could read them aloud, and he would appear knowledgeable during all meetings with the financial directors. When he mentioned something that I didn't already have an answer to or a question, I would Google it on the spot, write it with a Sharpie on a new card, and hold it up like the others. He also told the financial directors that our organization collaborated with all of the United Arab Emirates investors on the list in order to earn their trust, which was very untrue. I left the organization shortly after. So here's a situation where you have an executive director ill-prepared to run an organization, but is in a way kind of acting as a fraud, where he's pretending to know and then telling, well, we're connected to all these investors.
Yeah, that's a scary one. That's
Yeah,
a scary
run as fast as you can.
That's a scary one. Yeah, I've never heard of somebody saying or using cards and being shown notes from another room or outside in the hall or anything. That's a new one to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking like, although it was a boombox. If you think of, I can't remember the name of the movie, but we're. Oh well, but the thing with it, I agree. It's kind of funny to have someone holding signs up saying what the answers are.
It's like your own teleprompter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. but he, was a former politician, so maybe that they were more comfortable reading off of it versus having their own thoughts.
He thought the speechwriter would follow him wherever he went.
So let's go to the third story, which is when an employer is playing hard to get. I couldn't find any real good videos for this, so I put the cute baby playing with the phone because it has something to do with basically dropping phone calls, basically. So the story goes, I got a call back from a company a couple of weeks after my employment application saying they really liked my resume and wanted to schedule an interview with me. I responded that I'd be glad to do so and asked when was the best time it would be for them to interview me, as I was unemployed at the time and I was very flexible. The woman replied with, "Oh, wait, I don't have the calendar in front of me to see my availability. Let me call you right back. I'm still waiting."
That's strange.
Very strange.
Away.
But I've had friends have similar situations like this, and here's where it typically was. The companies weren't seriously looking to hire. They were interviewing people to interview people just in case they needed to hire, and they would save some steps by pre-interviewing people. And I think that's what happened here, but I could be wrong because the minute he said, "I'm unemployed, I can be available at any time," like, whoops, we're not really hiring. I'm not going to call this person back. That's my thought on that story. I don't know what you all think is a takeaway on this one.
It's not
Jim,
a practice that.
Spot on. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
There was a study done, and I'm honestly sure who did it, but it made sense to me when I heard it, that it takes an average of 17 touch points to get a response. Because I had a client that was so frustrated, thought he had a new client, reached out, made the connection, got an immediate response, and then crickets. Isn't the term ghosting now?
Yep.
When you have an initial connection and then they vanish from the earth. But when I told them, I said, often it takes an average of 17 touch points. And the reality is it could be, Jim, like you said, their intentions were, we were just kind of minding the field, seeing what's out there. We weren't 100% committed. But then also, how are we ever really going to know what's going on their side? And that you're simply not a priority. If they could be putting out fires. So, right.
Good point.
And I've got to jump off the call. I'm sorry. I have I have a board meeting for a charity that I sit on. So I've got to jump off. But, on that little note is especially through COVID, what you find is you're gun ho on this business plan and then all of a sudden it just gets stopped. Now, me personally, I try to respect everybody's time and efforts and would at least send hey, the position's changed, or, hey, we had to eliminate this campaign. Thanks for everything, blah, blah, blah. But not a lot of recruiters have that power to say that, because when you eliminate a position, what that does is it makes the organization look like they didn't have all their stuff together, or that business itself wasn't ready to make that investment. So it's difficult, but that person could have definitely responded back and said, "Hey, things have changed. We're moving in another direction," or, "Hey, we found a candidate, let's move forward." But that being said, I got to go. Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I look forward to watching you guys.
Yeah, we look forward to Be Local too.
Yep. Take care.
Can't wait.
And there were 4. And guess what? We are on story number 4.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, that's ironic, isn't it?
That is ironic.
So this one I think you're going to like. My boomer boss didn't know he's inappropriate.
Uh-oh.
Story goes, I was working as a call center representative. One day, my manager called me into his office to discuss my performance. He noticed that some of my performance metrics were not up to expectations. But instead of advising on how I can improve, he started making some comments like, "That's a shame. You're such a sweet girl." I thanked him for the feedback, saying that I'd improved my performance, and quickly left his office out of concern of what he might say next. Afterwards, I wasn't sure whether I should share this uncomfortable event with anyone, but luckily he was soon transferred to another department. Although his comments might have been well-intentioned, he definitely made me feel uncomfortable and never gave me any real feedback. So I was relieved that I didn't have to work with him again.
Ooh.
And
that is a scary story.
It is definitely. And the thing with it too is, and again, I'm not indicting a boomer generation or anything like that. I've had, let's say I've had female coworkers call me sweetie, and I never took it any offense. But again, to me, I might not take offense to it, but it might really impact somebody, or someone has some history or something has happened to them, and it could really seriously impact them.
Yeah. Well, and she was obviously upset, and that's kind of the thing. That's kind of the key there, is it upset her, so it wasn't okay. And that's just kind of where it is, right? And today's world, you have to always be professional. This is not we're talking amongst friends, on a Saturday evening, something like that. You have to keep it professional, and that's just not appropriate.
I agree. What I think is inappropriate, the saying you're a sweet girl, that doesn't offend me so much. It more reflects on him and his issues there. But what offends me is the condescending tone, as when she's already in a vulnerable spot of not doing well. And the fact, so the combination of the two, so calling her a sweet girl doesn't offend me, but it almost confirms that he doesn't think much of her if he didn't focus on her, how she could improve to begin with. Not so much the sweet girl, but just, it seems, weird.
And I think it caught up to him because he got transferred. So obviously he said it to somebody who did go and elevate that conversation that they probably had with him, and he said the same thing or even worse.
I've heard a lot worse, so I'm probably not the best metric there.
No, but I agree with you, Heidi, on it was the tone and the intent behind it. Saying it's a shame is game over.
Yeah.
It's a shame you did that. It's a shame it worked out that way. So what else is the person supposed to feel? Like, how do you come back from that? So there's nothing proactive about it. I appreciate your efforts here, but let's look at how you can make it even better the next time, as opposed to it's a shame. Come on.
Managers need to give specific examples of how employees can improve. I mean, you have to get in the trenches with an employee and go, okay, show me what you're doing. Okay, this is maybe have you considered doing it like this? If you're not willing to do that, then you're really not doing your job as a manager supervisor. You have to give people specifics. Don't just say, well, that's a shame, and leave it at that.
Right. And we all know as leaders that you start out with positives. You start out with their strengths, and you can, if you have an employee in front of you and you can't find one strength to start that conversation with, to kind of set the tone and relax the situation a little bit, then you're not hiring you have hiring issues.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing too, you have to understand, it goes to our next story, it's not easy. It's not fun being a new hire.
Ooh, no, it's not.
Story
First days
goes,
are the worst.
Definitely. Story goes, I was offered an administrative job in a real estate agency. During my 2 weeks there, I got zero training because the person doing the same job was reluctant to cooperate. The fact that the agency decided to hire a second employee for that job meant that she could go from full-time to part-time employment. And for some reason, she wanted to punish me for that. Also, on a regular basis, one of the business partners kept asking me to make him coffee, and then the other partner would notice that I wasn't at my desk, so she'd call my internal phone demanding I return to my workstation.
Very common, this situation.
And, this has happened to me before, where you have a director or you might have a manager who they're watching the chairs and seeing how long you're occupied in there. They're more concerned about that versus what the production is or the productivity. And this, to your point, this is so common.
It's so common. It's too bad that people spend so much time to belittle others instead of working on improving themselves. Yeah, it's very typical. And meaning, Mike, you look a little confused. I guess what I'm trying to say is,
I always look confused.
so, meaning, people will work harder to set others up to make themselves look better versus just improving themselves.
Yeah.
begin with.
So when you're coming into a new organization, it is a completely new dynamic, and you don't know. You're a guest in someone's home, and usually when you come into someone's home, they're polite and they can offer you a drink. Would you like to have a seat? Those kinds of things. But when you come into someone's home and they don't talk to you, then that's that's a very awkward situation very quickly. And in the professional environment, we've all seen instances in which someone comes in and another person is threatened. And when people are threatened, what kinds of things do? We withhold information. Well, that person didn't ask me specifically this question. If they would have asked me exactly that question, I would have given them the answer, but they didn't, right? So human behavior is such a fascinating thing, right? And it really is. And I think, and insecurities in the workplace, if we could ever figure that out, which we won't because we're human beings, but we all have to be aware of those insecurities and be okay with them, right? And again, those will always be out there and be issues.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Well, as hard it is to be on the receiving end, like to be that new employee that is getting no support, not the proper feedback, help in any way. It's also important for any new employee listening or anyone in that position to not own it. That's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. So I always say 100% of the time, you always have to own your own shit, but don't own anyone else's. So if nothing else, you can walk away, knowing it wasn't about you. Like Mike, you brought up the whole insecurities thing. So yes, instead of let's grow together, let's learn together. No, it'll just be easier if I take you down or I set you up to fail.
Right. Oh, that was a scary one.
Yeah. So earlier we had the new CEO that took over for the progressive CEO, and this one is called the zero involvement CEO.
Oh.
The story goes, in a previous job, the CEO of the company was not the typical leader. He had zero involvement in almost all of the current projects. Even worse, he didn't want us to tell him when things didn't go well because he said he was getting really stressed out. He preferred that teams would talk to the clients directly and fix the issues on their own. When the CEO told my manager, who was one of the team leaders, that he didn't know what was going on with my team, my manager suggested that he, the CEO, should speak more with the employees. The CEO thought that this was a great idea and asked my manager to remind him to talk to the employees once a month.
Wow.
Zero involvement CEO. Not a good situation to have at any company.
Yeah, the CEO role is such an interesting one, and the responsibilities of a CEO are very different depending on the type of organization and the size of organization that you're in. But the absentee CEO is definitely not setting any organization up for success.
No.
There's a fine line between the videographer, hidden camera CEO, and the absent one.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. I was kidding. Yeah, there's.
Sometimes you got to do the easy ones. This next one is one I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. I know, Heidi, it did with you. Oops, I'm sorry, hit the wrong one. When your old job just can't let go.
Ooh.
And the story goes, I was working at a private school, and right before summer break, I informed the administrator that I would not be renewing my contract. The administrator was quite bitter about seeing me leave, but I reassured her that I prepared detailed manuals for all my job duties, and I'd clear up all the school folders before my last day. And I did so. I also told her that she could contact me when the school opened again in case my replacement had any questions. I had no idea I would soon regret that. In the September, as I expected, the administrator of the school indeed called me with some questions. I had already organized everything so well that the questions were unnecessary, but I kindly replied and let her know that she could find where she could find it on the find the files that she was looking for. But then the phone calls became more and more frequent. She would call me every day for mostly little details, and she would email me a very long list of questions that she had. All these things that could be easily found just for a few seconds by looking into my notes, into the files, and doing a simple search on my computer. One day I didn't pick up the phone because I was at my new job, and she sent me a blunt text message. Why don't you answer?
Oh,
That's when I realized I should probably stop being so kind.
yeah. Well, that's a horrible story. You know, as employers, we need to, one, she prepared notes and really got that her boss supervisor in a position where they could go and look and take care of themselves and figure it out, right? That was fabulous. Now, as employers, we need to remember that, you know, typically we're getting given 2 weeks notice from an employee. That's the time that you engage and you ask those questions.
Right.
And after that, you know, if we're making calls to people, they're just being nice, and they certainly don't have any responsibility because we're all at-will employees so they don't have any responsibility to answer those questions. That's a scary one.
Go ahead,
But
Alana.
now that I'm in the bottom left corner, I'll take Sam's devil's advocate.
Yeah, go for it.
That boundaries or lack thereof. Now, I'm sure, yes, the intentions were for her to be helpful and supportive, wanting the transition for whoever took the place to be smooth, but you can't be afraid to set up your own boundaries. Like,
Agreed.
look, I'll be available for 15 minutes every Friday at noon if something comes up during the week. You know, set clear parameters. So she didn't deserve to be taken advantage of or disrespected, but she sure as heck left the door wide open for it to happen. So set those boundaries, those parameters.
That was a hard lesson to learn over life. That I probably learned about 5 years ago was people truly will take as much as you give. So it's shocking. It was so shocking to me so many times. And it would be clear that I, you know, kept replying. So why, you know, I have many stories like that on my own, and it was my fault, you know, but Sam, he's very gracious to give the CEO the benefit of the doubt. And you know, I'm pretty gracious to think, oh, well, hopefully this will be the last help that they'll need. But no, they'll just keep going.
Why don't you just come back in? Why don't you just come back in?
Why?
We'll see you on Monday, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had a situation. A company I work for, you know, I managed a team, implemented a CRM system, and the programmer that helped us in the process to really kind of fully integrate it was a friend of mine who did the same service with another at another job that I had. And what ended up happening was we get this system set up. I'm running the team. We're running really efficiently. And then the owner of the company says, you know what, if I hired a younger guy, I could save money by cutting Jim, and he could do the same thing. And that turned out to be a disaster, because when you take somebody who has knowledge, skills, and abilities, you pull them out of the job and you throw a body in there thinking all they got to do is hit a button and things will happen. It doesn't work that way. And I remember scrambling that had gone on with that company, and there was no way I would ever go back. It was just, you know, you'd go back, probably fix the problems, and then they would turn around and go ahead and cut you again. So no, the credibility was totally out of the window at that point. So I can be empathetic with what happens here. And to your point, I think if you do leave, you have to set some parameters saying, listen, I'll help you for a period of time, but you know, we can't continue this on forever.
Right.
Yeah, we got a wave on that one. There we go.
All right.
Hey,
Wave
Mark.
from
Martin.
Peru. Martine, nice to see you. Anyone else on that one? No? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on. So we all obviously have been dealing with remote working. So this thing is not a fan of remote working. Well, just walk out. And the story goes, I was working on a project with fellow developers, senior managers, and team leaders. One day we had a meeting. So we all gathered in the meeting room and logged into a video call because one of the developers was working remotely. To our surprise, the moment the remote developer joined the call, one of the senior managers sprang up and walked out of the room without even saying a word. We knew he disliked our remote coworker, but this was just so awkward, especially since we saw that he was pacing around outside of the meeting room, trying to listen in for the end of the video call. When the call was over, he re-entered the meeting as if nothing happened, leaving us all to wonder how this project will go on. So you have a story here where you have a senior manager who does not like remote workers. And, I remember a lot of companies going through that debate, and then we got thrown into the pandemic, and now all of a sudden everybody has to be a remote worker. We all survived. Companies survived. Some thrived. We've seen, obviously, the rise of virtual meetings, Teams, Zoom, all that. We could still get it done. Now, that being said, I work in development. I like being out in the field, gripping and grinning, talking to people. I can do so much, obviously, virtually.
Oh, you do it well virtually, Jim.
Thank you.
You do very well, Jim.
Check is in the mail. But the thing with it is, now I know moving forward, it's going to be blended. It's going to be blended. We're going to be doing virtual, and we're going to be doing, when you need to get on an airplane or you need to get in a car, and you need to physically go to the meeting. It just is what reality is going to be. It's a change with the technology. It's a change of evolution. Mm-hmm. So, in this situation, you have someone just so animate about, I don't like remote workers. All of a sudden we have to like remote workers because we're remote workers.
I think it's going to take a different type of manager, supervisor to really be successful with remote teams. Because the one thing, and I've managed remote teams well before the pandemic, and the one thing that I learned very quickly is you have to have a regular communication cadence, and you have to be very deliberate about communicating with your teams. And that can be, it can be a number of things. It can be one-on-one, it can be together every Monday morning, whatever. But you do have to communicate with your teams, and it's fascinating to watch during the pandemic. Companies they've adjusted, and they've had no choice but to adjust, and employees have adjusted as well, and they go, you know what, I don't miss that 45-minute commute in the morning and the evening, and I enjoy having that time with my family, etc. And so my quality of life is improved, and I don't want to give that up. So we're in a spot now that I think employers, to be competitive, are going to have to continue to make that adjustment.
Big adjustment.
I agree. I think that, like the rest of the stories, this reflects more on the immature senior manager that couldn't behoove himself to sit in a room with a remote video call or call is just not good on their part.
No.
Horrific and scary.
Yeah.
No excuse for that lack of professionalism, whether you like the situation or not. We rarely can control the outside circumstances. Hello, pandemic. We all know that. But to use it as an excuse, well, that's not the way I like to operate, to behave unprofessionally and disrespectfully.
Yeah.
We definitely don't get a pass on that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, for me, I get so much more done out of the home office than I do in the office, because in the office you have people stopping in and hey, and so every time you get interrupted, maybe it's once an hour, whatever, you kind of lose your spot, and you have to go, okay, where was I? You lose that efficiency, and in the home office, I find that I'm much more productive in that I can kind of just put my head down, so to speak, and not be interrupted and get things done.
Does that include interruptions from Winnie?
From the puppy, she's definitely an interrupter.
Yeah, my little Westie likes when I'm broadcasting, she just lies right next to me and listens to me.
Yeah.
So at least I have one listener, one viewer.
Your biggest fan.
So yeah. So this next story, we always were told. I remember, you had a parent or grandparent yelling at you, or a teacher, don't run with scissors. So this one is choose wisely when borrowing scissors. At a previous office, only 2 people had scissors, one coworker and our manager. Whenever a new employee asked who had scissors they could borrow, I would tell them, and they would advise them not to borrow the manager's pair. They would, of course, ask why, and I tell them it's because I only ever see him use them for 2 things: to snip open his salad dressing packets and to trim his nose hairs at his desk. Yeah.
Oh.
They would always laugh, and they would sort of snicker about it, but they never really believed me until they saw it for themselves, which they always did eventually, because his office had glass walls on 2 sides.
Oh my.
So again, be careful when you borrow that office equipment, especially scissors. You never know what they. I had a coworker that would use the scissors to clip his fingernails and toenails, and I don't know how he do his toenails, but man, he could do some amazing things with scissors.
Yeah, this is gross.
Yeah, that's definitely a horror story.
Listen, this is Heidi. Workplace horror stories.
Horror story.
There you go.
Horror story. Yeah. No, let's leave your grooming and all those things to the home.
When it comes to culinary, there's the right equipment for culinary use, not scissors. The second thing is use scissors for what they are, for cutting paper and everything like that. You don't want to use them for clipping your nose hairs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
this one's
maybe
increase your scissor budget too.
Yeah, get some more.
Yeah.
I mean, and hey, practice a little bit of personal hygiene. Listen, every employee handbook has a big section about professional hygiene. So come on, you got to get with it, right?
That's right.
So this next story, and I had a hard time finding a video. I wish I could find it. This one's called "Troll Dolls Are Not Always Work Friendly." And the story goes, a woman who's in the cubicle next to mine collects troll dolls, every color of hair and type, everywhere, all over her desk. They even peer over her cubicle into mine. Oh. There is, in my opinion, barely any space on her desk for real work or even a computer. I think she does what she loves, and I respect her for that. Had anyone in current or past careers, have you had a cubicle mate that had too many troll dolls or little toys and things? I did.
Did it encroach into your space, Jim?
Not really in my space, but I'll be honest, if you shook the cube the right way, they would tip off the top of the hutch and fall into my space. And what they were basically different types of WWE. Well, at that time, it would have been WWE, was a World Wrestling Federation back then.
Yeah.
So, and these were basically, the Hulkamanic and all these, and it was interesting. But you're an adult and you've got all these little figurines all over your desk.
Yeah.
Well, if gives it.
I'm calling you out, Heidi.
Yep.
What was that?
Calling
Heidi,
you
there's
out,
a spider behind you, by the way.
Yeah, don't move.
Don't.
That's the only Halloween decoration that we have orange lights and a spider. And I said, I'm going to borrow that. I mean, we do a lot of fall stuff like pumpkins and corn and stuff, but I'm not a big Halloween person. So yeah, that spider has become my friend now. We've had it for a few years.
But I've decorated when I had a cubicle. Now I have an office, but when I had cubicles or workstations, I would decorate them. I would sometimes put the battery operated lights in for Christmas, put up a little mini Christmas tree, all those kind of things. You celebrate some of the holidays because, if you're working out of a workstation or sometimes even an office or a cubicle, you want to do a little bit to kind of make it feel comfortable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Who wants to look at fabric walls all around you and your computer screen and be generic and stale, right?
And I completely agree. So long as it's not interfering with your work or your coworkers' ability to work, I say have at it. And I've seen people that put a lot of different stuff up, and it makes them feel more like at home because you're there all the time. But then I've seen the opposite, where I've joked with some employees of, you really ought to put a picture or something up. Put something up. Yeah, anything.
My boss said, I'm scared you're going to quit any day.
Yeah, and that's always the response is, well, if you let me go, then I don't have to pack up a big box. I'm just gone.
I was so oblivious. I had no idea that really, showed something, but I can see why, that. And I put some pictures. I've just never been a decorator of my work. I've usually just gone to work, and I just never did. After he said that, a light bulb went off, like, gosh, he sure is right. So, and I still never decorated my desk. I had an office, so I put my favorite pictures of my children or my children and I on the door. And I said, see, this is, right on the door. But yeah, I'll never forget when he said that. I was like, wow, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the opposite thing too, to really kind of, I think, work against you with a cubicle. I worked for a data communications company back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And a coworker of mine, he ended up going to a competitor, but he was a pack rat with his cubicle. And I always said to him, I said, Joe, if a fire broke out in your cubicle, it would burn for days before it spread out. He would collect every catalog, everything that would come in, and he would put them in the hutches and the drawers and stack them all over his desk. And when he left, he just up and left, and because he really didn't have anything personal in there. I swear to God, it seemed like it took us days to clean the stuff out. And we were using, those little plastic rolling dumpsters and things like that just to clear it out. And because he had worked, I think he had worked there 7 or 8 years maybe. And literally, I think he had stuff that he had accumulated over that time, just piling up. And, when he decided to give us 2-week notice, it was like, hey, I'm out of here. He just grabs whatever personal things he has, walks out, and just leaves that whole cubicle area full of all these.
Someone should have made him clean up before
reports. That was back when we had green bar. Remember, Heidi, you might be too young. We had all the green bar reports, and I swear to God, there was so many green bars stacked everywhere.
Oh, I do remember slightly a little. I think I might have helped my dad with those. I think there is a clear common denominator with. I think there's a clear common denominator in a lot of these stories, and it's boundaries. When people don't personally have boundaries, they're not going to have professional boundaries on some things. They'll certainly, hopefully, be on their best behavior. But after some time, it's going to wear thin, and it's going to start showing, whether it be excessive amount of troll dolls or, green bar reports or, something like that. Or hidden cameras, things like that. Hidden cameras still bothers me. I really think that's it's still, that is an ultimate need to control versus anything, like even if you have someone that's doing the utmost worst to, if it's illegal, you can install a hidden camera. But if they're doing something, but these boundaries
manage performance. Don't manage, that way. Manage by employees' performance.
Exactly. Yeah. And so all of these situations, boundaries are clearly being crossed. And I think that's what would need to be addressed. Some people are oblivious, like me. I stay to my own. I'm non-committal. I'm not bringing stuff to work. So but I didn't like that it made my boss uncomfortable. So I certainly, brought stuff in after he said that. But I was oblivious on how nothing personal on my desk affected others. I was oblivious. So I'm sure it's the other way around with excessive items in your cubicle or desk. So
So before the stream, Heidi had shared this with me. So I did a clip on this. And this is, did you know 64% of Americans have nightmares about their jobs? Those nightmares are sleeping with a coworker, being late to work, showing up at work naked, fighting with your boss, and the weird one, getting lost in the office. And I remember an episode, I think of, I can't remember that. Oh, why am I forgetting the name of the show right now? There was an episode on one of it might have been The Office or something like that, where they had one where, the getting lost in the office type of thing. So I think those fears and phobias are definitely ones that a lot of people do have.
Those are real nightmares, though. Those are
nightmares.
They're going to accidentally sleep with their coworker. They actually have a dream.
Yeah, they have a dream, right? Yeah,
that's it. And that means, for instance, that one. A lot of times, I read that it's common for people to have dreams about, in that circumstance, about someone they're not even attracted to, or but they either have something to complete with them, or that other person has a trait that they admire and they would like to, learn from them, some other kind of bond that's not necessarily sexually. The getting lost at work, that's getting, I read that meaning can mean getting overwhelmed at work, getting lost in your work, not setting up clear boundaries between your work and home life. So these are 64% of us have nightmares about work, and these are the most common.
Wow.
What?
You ever had one, Mike?
No,
he doesn't have nightmares.
I don't have nightmares. Yeah.
Good dreams. Listen, Heidi, Mike better than I do. He doesn't have any nightmares.
No.
That's true. I can see that.
Yeah.
I know you, Jim, better than I know Mike.
That's why I'm in the padded room.
That's right.
And you're in nightmares. No, I'm kidding.
I remember watching Freddy Krueger. I don't go to sleep at night.
Freak.
What an amazing, historic broadcast here for a Halloween special talking about workplace horror stories. Anything in closing? Do we want to leave anything that we didn't talk about with the viewers?
Two things. I want to know if all of you watch scary movies. If you all enjoy watching scary movies, you do. Okay. What about you, Mike?
I do.
I don't watch that many scary movies. I watch a lot of action, comedy stuff, and
he laughs during scary movies.
Yeah, if somebody wants to watch a scary movie, I'll watch it with them. But it's not.
Eleni, I'm surprised that you do.
Really? Well, but I like I call it the smart scary. Like, I want to be totally surprised. I'm not like talking like a cliche slasher movie. Like, yeah, we know he did it. He's walking down the hall with the meat cleaver.
Yeah.
That twist. That just like
twist.
Whoa,
yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, there were a lot like that.
I do not like scary movies. Almost like I don't like super spicy food, where I'm like, what is the point of being scared? Or what is the point of doing that to your tongue? So I always find it interesting when I meet someone else that doesn't like scary, but I remember the episodes growing up or the movies growing up of Scream. But yeah, I just, now that I'm a little older, I find it interesting that I just don't get into scary movies.
Yeah, they're going to have another Scream coming out here. It's more like a reunion one. Yeah.
Wow.
What about the poll results? That was the second thing.
The poll results. What did the audience say?
I don't see anything posted. I feel bad. But hey, listen, if you're watching this in the replay, you can still pick 1 through 4 or all of them.
Good.
You want me to show it again, Heidi?
Yes,
Sure.
Let's see it again.
Let's do it again. Boom, here it is. What is your most feared work nightmare? Number 1, accidentally replying all.
Yeah.
Forgetting to mute video, getting fired, or getting called on in meeting ill prepared. Just put a 1, 2, 3, 4 in the comments.
Interesting. Yeah, we talked
Interesting
about that
stuff.
reply all. I think that video one is a tough one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was during the summer. That was in the meetings, where I'm sorry, it was in the news.
Oh yeah.
Jeffrey Toobin, who's
Had
a
some.
regular on CNN, had a incident
Mhm.
with the camera in Zoom.
Got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be careful with your cameras. Well, this was a lot of fun, Jim. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for hosting. I feel like we should give you some candy or something. Like
I'm not allowed candy here in the institute.
in the and do it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was scissors that you weren't allowed to have. You
Those
can't have
two.
candy either.
Those two. The spider might work out good for me.
There you go.
The spider might work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll put me in the mood.
Yeah. Well, what a great session. What a bunch of great stories, great conversations. Those are definitely some scary work horror stories out there.
And it makes me so grateful for my job.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a great boss.
I just want to say, if you submitted a story, thank you for participating. That's we need the content, right? So thank you very much, audience, for participating.
There was some that I could not use. Again, I wanted to keep it. Obviously, we didn't want to reveal anybody or companies. We didn't want to reveal top secret information. So there was several that, unfortunately, I wasn't able to edit to a point where you could, like these stories, you're not going to be able to figure out who we're talking about. And that's the way I wanted it.
Yeah.
Before we break, I wanted to make sure that I did do an announcement for the next build out, a brief live stream on Monday evening at 7:30. I'm going to have Jill Alexander from Safeways. She's VP of Marketing. We're going to be talking about marketing and integrated approach. So that's going to be Monday evening, 7:30 p.m. It'll go out on YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on Twitter. And please join us then and ask questions, post comments, all kind of good stuff like that. So real quick around here, Heidi, how can people get in contact with you?
As always, you can find me on LinkedIn, Heidi Brooks, or hbrooks@vcpsales.com. And reach out to me with anything, connections, networking ideas, round tables, things like that.
Scary movies.
Codings. My favorite.
And we're going, Eleni?
Yes, Eleni Anastas at LinkedIn, and I'm branded under my own name, so elenianastas.com. And I always look forward to connecting. To me, the real currency is and always will be relationships. So I look forward to connecting to cultivate that. Don't hesitate to reach out.
And I want to, from Eleni, I want to get your dollar symbol behind you there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a cool dollar.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it on a chain.
Yeah.
Michael LaMont.
So I'm on LinkedIn. Find me there. Message me. I will get back to you.
Excellent. And you can reach me on LinkedIn. You can send me an email at jim@jimkunkel.com. You can catch me broadcast on Monday evenings and Thursday evenings, and also every Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. You can catch an all-new build-out broadcast. I have some really great guests, and I appreciate everyone who views, everyone who participates with this, all of our broadcast. And everyone have a good evening, good weekend. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
And get a lot of candy. And if you don't get your own candy, take it from your kids. Heidi, take it from her.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What's my favorite?
Reese's.
Yeah.
Smarties. Buy me Smarties off of Amazon and ship them here.
There you go.
Great. Someone's ready for bed.
Whoa, right.
All right. Stay tuned for some a great, awesome outro. So hold on here. Here we go. Everyone, good night.
Bye,
Good
guys.
night.